Hi, I'm Pam Costa. I'm not Dr. Pam Costa. I am Pam Costa, master's student in the holistic program. And I am really thrilled to be here. I had talked to Zvi, around this time last year, saying I had this research I wanted to do. I was really excited about it, and could I do it at JFK? And he said, no, we don't have any way to do that. And then he wrote me a few months later. He said, hey, that research you wanted to do, there's a space for you to do that now. So I'm really thrilled to be able to be here to share this with you. But it is a holistic research symposium, so I would be remiss to not start with a more embodied experience of the research. So I can go ahead and forward one slide. So I'll invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. The topic of this meditation is around sexuality. So please be mindful of your own history with this topic and take care of yourself by staying within the bounds of your own comfort zone with this topic. I'd like you to take a moment to focus on your breath and your body. And imagine that you've just gotten off the phone with a good friend who has invited you to come over to their house every Monday night for the next 4 weeks, along with a handful of your other friends, to talk about sex. They told you that each meeting is going to be 2 hours long with an assigned topic and discussion prompts. Take a moment to see how you feel about this and whether or not your initial reaction is to accept their invitation. You ultimately decide to attend and are walking up to their front door the next Monday evening. Everyone grabs a drink and sits around the coffee table in the living room. And as you look around the room, you see a mixture of emotions on your friends' faces, ranging from excitement to nervousness. Your friend announces that tonight's discussion will be about social messages, and that the discussion prompt is, what kind of messages did you receive as a child around sexuality? Your friend goes first and shares that they got a lot of messages that sex was dangerous and would likely lead to pregnancy or a disease, and you probably shouldn't do it until you were married. Another friend shares that they understood from their parents and a lot of the television shows and media and movies that they saw that men like sex, but women don't. Your turn is next. So take a moment to think about what you might want to share. A week later, you are back at your friend's house. You notice this time there's less nervousness, despite the pretty vulnerable topic of body image and masturbation. Your friend announces the 2 prompts for this evening are, how do you feel about your body? And what is your history with masturbation? Your friend tackles the first one, sharing that they have always felt like they needed to lose weight to look good, and that thought materially impacts their comfort with sex. The next person shares that they really enjoy masturbation as a tension release, but have felt a little guilty about it ever since they got caught as a child. They also start giggling and share that although they're overweight, one of the things they like doing most during sex is looking in the mirror because they feel so powerful and so free. Your turn is next. So take a moment to think about what you might want to share. One more week goes by, and you are driving to your friend's house, knowing that this week the topic is fantasy. After everyone settles in, your friend announces that the prompt this evening is, do you fantasize? And if so, what is your go-to fantasy? And if not, what holds you back? Your friend shares that at first they thought they didn't fantasize, but they noticed this week that sometimes someone out in the world will catch their eye, and that often starts a fantasy that they shut down so quickly it's almost like it never started. They wonder out loud why they do that and what might happen if they let their imagination go from time to time. Another friend shares that they fantasize frequently with their partner about having sex with other people, even though it's something they're not sure they want to do in real life. Your turn is next. So take a moment to think about what you might want to share. The final meeting is here. Everyone is so relaxed and connected by this meeting that it's a bit hard for your friend to wrangle everyone into the living room to get started. Once everyone is settled, your friend shares that tonight's prompts are: what parts of yourself are censored in the bedroom? And what do you want more of in your sex life? Your friend shares that they have decided that they want to look at their partner more during sex. They realize that they close their eyes most of the time because looking in their partner's eyes seems so vulnerable, and that they want to try to be more vulnerable, both inside and outside the bedroom. The next person shares that they notice they prefer aggressive touch, but have never felt comfortable telling their partner this, and that they'd like to try asking for what they want. Your turn is next. So take a moment to think about what you might want to share. So take a few more moments to notice how you feel, and return your attention and your focus to your body and your breath. And when you are ready, open your eyes. So thank you for joining me on that. I thought that rather than try to explain to you what this was about, I thought I'd give you a little bit of the experience of what the women who participated in this study went through. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go on, but hopefully you have an embodied idea of what that might have been like. So this desire to do this research stems from my own personal experience. I think the fact that there are research that's unbiased out there is like a myth, and this is definitely biased by my own experience. So 4 years ago, I had never talked to my girlfriends about sex. This was in spite of the fact that I actually had a lot of struggles with my sexuality. I had been together with my husband for about 15 years at that point, and I really struggled with the classic desire discrepancy thing. He wanted more sex and I didn't. So it was a challenge for us. We had a good life, we did have sex, but it was a topic of conversation that brought up a lot of stress every 6 to 12 months for us. We'd sit down and have like the talk. So we started, there was a kind of a critical point where we decided to go to therapy for that. And kind of in parallel, I decided that I was going to be brave and start to talk to some girlfriends about some of the challenges we were facing. And so 3 years ago, I invited some girlfriends over to my house. They like all wore yoga clothes and told their partners that they were going to yoga. But they were coming over to my house to talk about sex. We met regularly, every month for that first year. We actually still meet, not quite as regularly, but we still meet. 2 years ago, so kind of 1 year in, I was like looking around, and I was like thinking back to where we had started, and I was like, wow, whether they were in relationship or outside of relationship, and some had even like changed orientations during the process, like I just asked them about what they had experienced and what changes in their lives they had seen, and the stories were pretty incredible. And so that kind of was like rumbling around in my head as I was starting the program at JFK. And so about a year ago, I started looking into the academic literature about peer groups and the impact of them. And I found a lot of research actually on their impact on a variety of clinical issues. So diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, but I didn't see anything around sexual health. So I decided to look into it. So a little bit of background, because maybe you don't know a lot about female sexual health. Studies show that 35 to 40% of women experience challenges with desire, arousal, orgasm, and pain during sex. And most of those studies are on like a 4-week window. So the chances of like lifetime prevalence being higher are pretty for sure. And there's also studies that show most of these women do not seek help. So they kind of assume either there's no help or they're scared to ask for help because it's such a taboo topic. So about 80% don't seek help. And then for those that do, they primarily go to like an OBGYN or their regular doctor. And then a very small portion actually go seek the help of a mental health provider. So these women aren't getting help. So when I got the news that we could do research, I was really excited. I'm like, okay, what question am I going to ask? So what I asked was, can peer support groups offer improvement in female sexual health? And more specifically, after participation in a peer-led support group, will women experience changes in those stats that we just learned about, desire, arousal, orgasm, pain or satisfaction, and distress? The way that I went about, it's a mixed method study, so similar to SV's. I'm using pre-post online surveys. I use a couple validated metrics, so there's the Female Sexual Function Index, the Female Sexual Distress Scale, and then a quality of life survey as well. And then I followed up with a subset of those women with hour-long interviews to get some more insight in addition to the quantitative data. We invited over 100 women. I actually didn't invite the women. They're women who have been running these circles for the last year, and so those women actually did all the invitation of women into their homes. So about 100 women participated across 20 groups from February to April. So I'm really excited the timing of this because I actually have data. So they met once a week for 4 weeks, and the topics were exactly what you just kind of explored personally in that meditation. So the first week was social messages, the second week was body image and masturbation, the third week was fantasy, and the last week was censoring in the bedroom. And there were no teachings, there was just a topic and prompts. And the only guideline the women got were that they were not to give advice. So I don't know if you've seen women together, but they're constantly giving each other advice. So that was off the table for this. So this was really about sharing experiences without advice. So that was the one guideline. About 30% of the women participated in the online surveys, and 10% participated in interviews. So I'm so excited. I get to show you guys data. So this is just a distribution of the age range of the women. So you can see it's bimodal with a peak in the early 30s and a peak in early 50s with an average age right in between 40. I'm 40, so that makes me happy. Yeah, so those were the women that participated. In terms of diversity, I did struggle with getting, actually, go back. I did struggle with getting a diverse sample. So these are largely American women, although we do have some Brazilians and Canadians in the study. They are largely white, college educated. I do have a more diverse sample in terms of orientation. So it's about, I think, 3/4 heterosexual, and then the rest identifies bisexual, queer, or otherwise. And then in terms of sex frequency, which is something that I was interested in, pretty evenly split between not having any sex, having sex once a week, and having sex multiple times a week. So pretty split there. So now, yeah, we can go on. Here's the data. Just to give you a little bit of context, the Female Sexual Function Index, which is one of the surveys I used, has like six subcategories. So it looks at specifically desire, arousal, lubrication, orgasm, satisfaction, and pain. The power analysis, the p-values of all of these things looked really good for all of them, but the power analysis showed I can really only trust the results for desire, arousal, and orgasm. So I'm going to focus on those for the purposes of this presentation. So desire pre-post went up 16%, arousal went up 25%, and orgasm went up 26%. I didn't know what to expect. My group had run for a year before I even asked women what was going on, and so I thought 4 weeks, I don't know if I'm going to see anything really. So I was really pleasantly surprised to see these results. And I'll talk a little bit more about why I think this is happening in a couple slides. Some more results, because there's this interesting thing, even if you look at the DSM and how they classify female sexual desire disorders, it's not just whether or not you're functioning or not, but whether or not you're having distress about that functioning. And so I measured both of those things. So the function went up 20%. That's kind of a composite of those scores we just saw on the prior slide. And distress went down almost 30%. So there was a high amount of distress in the population, even when function was pretty good. So it was nice to see quite a big shift in that. Overall health was up 6%, but again, I didn't have enough samples for the power analysis to kind of be confident in that. Yep, one more. So why does this happen? I had one open-ended question at the end of my post survey. So these quotes are based on that. They're not based on the hour-long interviews. But I heard a lot of phrases around normalization. Going from I kind of thought I was alone with these issues, or I was weird, or something was wrong with me, to my issues are normal. I am normal. And I know on my own personal journey that was huge. When you feel normal, you don't feel so much shame about what it is that's going on for you in your life, in your sexual life. I became more accepting of my differences. Those really powerful words. I felt very safe. There's a whole set of things that people have talked about, this community of women. I never had a safe place to talk about these things before. And as I sat with these women every week, I don't know, even just walking through the meditation, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so bonded to this invisible group of people, just sharing those things. A lot of the women, you can imagine just with the age range, started taking something that they had previously felt uncomfortable with, started feeling more comfortable and able to talk about it, and suddenly realized they could talk to their children about this from a space of comfort. So that was really cool. So it's great insight how to discuss sexual health with my son and daughter. I saw that in multiple respondents. Made me more aware of female censorship. Some comments about getting angry about something that they realized all along but hadn't really thought about very much. And then empowered to have open and honest conversations with my partner was another theme, just kind of hearing like, okay, it's scary enough to talk to my girlfriends, but once I get over that hump, oh wait, maybe I can talk to my kids or my partner. So I think some of these things were behind some of those shifts that we saw. So this is just one quote from a woman and kind of how it translates into desire and arousal. So I felt so incredibly supported by these women. We had some diverse experiences in our group. I hadn't realized how much I have neglected this very important aspect of my life. The conversations and topics in the circle enabled me to come home and have very open and much needed conversations with my husband. Things are starting to heat up again as we're both putting more effort into our sex life. So I just thought that really encapsulated a lot of the comments that I saw. So let's see, next steps, yep. So some next steps, I'm not done. I haven't, there's someone's transcribing the interviews, and then hopefully I'm gonna use some students to help me code them. And then I wanna share, and my whole goal is to really just spark a conversation within the medical and mental health community. There's not a lot of research out there around things that can help women with challenges around sexuality. And so I would love to spark the conversation on how peer support groups could fit into the emerging landscape of options. It's great, it's free, it's really easy, you don't have to have a lot of skill to do those groups. So yeah, I want to spark that conversation. And then limitations and future considerations. So the list is way longer than this. I just put a couple on the slide. You realize when you're doing research, oh, I didn't think about that or that. So definitely a larger study would be necessary. There were some of those metrics that I just can't rely on the data. I don't have a control group. There's just a lot of things that a bigger study, a more diverse study. Again, they're white, college-educated women. Of a certain age, so it'd be great to get a more diverse population because these results you can't, extend to other or generalize to other populations. Also, just like a dosage efficacy thing, is if it's 4 weeks, like what happens with 6 months or something like that. I think that was one of my theories on why satisfaction didn't change. Is like in 4 weeks I can maybe change my own personal experience, but how much that has a ripple effect into my interactive experiences and my satisfaction with my relationship overall, like that might take more time. So that's, I think, it, right? Yeah. So yeah, if you want to grab me and talk about it, I would love to talk to you about it. There's also my emails, pam@downtothere.com. It's easier than the JFK email. So yeah, I think we also have just a couple minutes if anyone has any questions about it. Yeah.
It sounded like you had quite a number of these groups. So how did those get going? Were they there before, or did you somehow initiate other people to have these groups?
Yeah, it's a great question. So because I've been fairly public about my own journey, like after I started talking to women, my friends a couple years ago, I started being like, wait, why aren't people outside of my friend circle part of this conversation, and why aren't men part of this conversation? So I started a blog, and a lot of people follow that. And so I advertised through that. And that basically just found the women who are willing to start the circles, and then they found their own friends. So yeah, I didn't have to reach out too far. But there have been previous iterations of these circles running before this research last year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned one of the criteria in these groups was no advice giving, and I'm presuming that extended to no crosstalk. Was that accurate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Whether or not crosstalk would maybe cause some issues. I did, I did a little bit of facilitator training as these women signed up. I just said, hey, here's the best tips and tricks based on prior hosts. And some groups just don't have a problem with crosstalk, and so I wasn't super heavy-handed on that guidance. For women that expressed like there were maybe issues in their group, I was like, yeah, I have a talking stick or something like that. What I did tell all of them was that we don't get an opportunity to just share our experience uninterrupted. And so if you had 5 women for the first hour, maybe give everyone, 20 minutes, or no, not 12 minutes. So to maybe set a timer and to encourage, if they have things to share, to wait until their turn. Yeah.
So do you think there might be a correlation in outcomes with feedback and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think it's muddy, right? When you have women all running their own groups, chances are they're going to be all a little bit different. And so there's a lot of data that I don't have on their specific running of their group. I tried to say, in the first hour, it's just general check-in. In the second hour, you dive into this topic. And so I tried to give them guidelines to keep it all as consistent as possible. But certainly there's probably, some issues with that. Yeah, great question. Any other questions?
Were your groups all in the Bay Area?
No, so the question was, were they all in the Bay Area? They were all over the place. So stretching from New York to California, and then some up in Canada, one down in Brazil. In the past, they've been in Budapest, New Zealand, and all over the US. Mm-hmm. Yes?
How many people are typically in groups?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did give guidance on that as well. I guided between 4 and 8 women. 4 is kind of, in my experience, the bare minimum to have a diversity of experience, and 8 is the max to give everyone ample time to share. So I guided 4 to 8 women.